Hi, and welcome to Random Rogers Big Picture for the week of November 25th. Lots going on out there. Had an interesting comment come in from one reader on Friday talking about riding out the market in case it does, in fact, turn out to be some sort of, nasty decline, prolonged decline, bear market, correction, dip. Fill in the descriptive term of your choice. But he has a plan to just ride it out. He doesn't think it will amount to anything. I believe his word was consequential, but either way, whether that was his exact word or not, I took his meaning to be is not going to be something as bad as what happened at the start of this decade. It sounds like he is of a mind to think just normal bear market. So if he's right, and I'm in that camp as well, then that implies somewhere around 25 or 30%, and maybe that's not the figure he has in mind, but whatever, he's content to ride it out. This brings up an important point, something I've touched on before, but it is always worth, in my opinion, revisiting. So that's what we're going to do, is revisit it. If, this is kind of an important thing, and I've touched on it before, because it is so important, and that is, and going forward, I'm not necessarily limiting the discussion to the American stock market, but just equities in general. Over time, we all know they average about 10% annualized. And as I've talked about many times, that 10% figure includes all the feast, famine, war, bloodshed, bubbles, happy times, sad times, bad times. Anything you can think of spits out an average 10% a year. So if you go for the ride on all of those things over a very long period of time, you're probably going to get that 10%, give or take. That's important because the more trading that you do around that, just riding it out, whatever it turns out to be, the more trading you do around that, the greater the chance for missing when the market goes up, or I guess conceivably, although this would be tough to do, compounding the problem when the market goes down. So if you do nothing, you're going to capture the market, whatever market that might be, over a very long period of time. And if you do have a long period of time, if you have that luxury, and most people, their time horizon is longer than they think, but if you've got that luxury, then following the market down, what sounds like a horrible number, following it down by that horrible number is not a death blow. You look at the crash of 1987, the various 20% dips that happened in the 90s, just on and on and on, even cutting in half in the 70s if you had a long time horizon. The market, I think, was around 100 or so, the S&P, when it started to cut in half in the mid-70s, and now we're at 1440 or some number close to that. So it's kind of an important thing. That's the context behind any type of value that you ever try to add in your life. The context behind that has to be, if I do nothing, I'm going to capture the market, and if I save properly and I have a long enough time period, I don't need to trade around those down periods. And this becomes especially true if you are not managing other people's money. You've got no one to report to. It's just your account. You got to do what you got to do to get to where you need to be when you need to access the money, whether it's 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever, your plan calls for. That's all that matters. If you're a little behind, and this is tough to do, if you're a little behind, save more. That's fairly simplistic. If you are able to add any amount of value over time, you're probably, that probably leads you to not have to save as much, although that takes on a whole different type of gamble. Now, the reason that I try to remove a part of down a lot, the reason why that's an important goal to me is I am managing other people's money, obviously. And in trying to do that, the bigger macro is trying to smooth out their ride. If you think about it, someone who hires someone to manage their money, what are they looking for? They're probably looking for some sort of protection when the market is going through a bear phase or a down phase or a corrective phase, whatever. That is an important... we've got more people playing with the radio. That happens all the time. That's an important aspect of your own psyche. And, if you're managing your own money and you're content to ride it out, and for some people they might not be content to ride it out, but they might be better off riding it out, you really need to wrap your hands around the fact that equities work a certain way over long periods of time. I talk to people occasionally who really are worried that some sort of corrective phase is going to impact their ability to access their money 5 years from now or 10 years from now or whatever. And the probabilities of such a thing are just not that high. It's not a realistic probability. People are going to jump on now and say, but look at the last 7 years. Okay, you're cherry picking, a period right now. You could cherry pick a period from the 70s, and then you could cherry pick something from the 30s. So if you think about that, you've got 3 different decades fairly spread out where equities let you down. But that's talking about a 10-year period when most people's time horizons are much longer than 10 years. And quite candidly, if your time horizon really is 10 years, and I don't even know what that means exactly, but if it really is 10 years, then you probably shouldn't be that heavy in equities. Actually, here's what it means. Paying for a kid's education. If your child is 9 or 10, they probably shouldn't be that heavy in equities. That's something that we did learn from the correction or crash or cut in half or whatever from the start of this decade. So this is kind of an important thing is, do you need to add value for your own psyche? If so, what work are you willing to do that? Then does it make sense? Does your psyche, are you coming from the right place? If you're 45 years old, I'm going to say reassess your thinking if you don't think you're that good of a trader. This calls for a whole lot of introspection as far as what you're capable of, what emotionally you need, and possibly a readjustment of any of those things. And I think if you really do look at yourself in a very constructive way in the mirror, I have a feeling you probably come out of that as a better investor. For myself personally, 41, I'm probably about where I need to be. At least I'd like to think I am. And market declines just don't faze me in the least. That's just a function of, this is a reference I've made before, of owning the textbook. Equities work a certain way, period. Having emotion about it makes no sense. It's totally counterproductive. And I think that's about it for the week. Just a smorgasbord, a cornucopia, if you caught that on the network the other day, a cornucopia of sports. Have a great weekend.